All right, Professor Jim Schultz here. I wanted to go ahead and go through this practice set of homework that I sent you guys that you guys are working on. And so I wanted to pick maybe 3 or 4 of these problems and kind of walk you through how to solve each one of these problems, just to kind of make sure you guys understand how to use your calculators, understand how to, apply some of the things that we talked about in the time value money videos. And so let's go ahead and get started. So the first problem I want to go through here is we'll start with kind of a simple one. We'll go through number 1. Suppose you just invested $2,288 at an 8% interest rate. How much will this investment be worth to you in 5 years? Okay, now, my first piece of advice whenever you are solving a time value money problem is to construct a timeline every single time. I would encourage you, and you'll see it in most of my solutions, even in the simple problems. It is just a good habit to get into because what happened? Oh, the wind. Yeah, we're bogging down a lot of man. You guys are jamming me up, man, making these videos. But no, we should be able to power through. These timelines are really important because in the simple problems, they may not prove to be too useful. However, when you start getting into more difficult, complicated problems, you're going to recognize that having a well-constructed timeline is an invaluable tool to understanding when certain things occur. Okay, so I've got a $2,288 investment today. My discount rate is 8%. How much is this guy going to be worth to me in 5 years? So here are all my variables, right? And remember, from the calculator video, you press the number and then the button. Number, button, number, button, number, button. Compute future value, right? And again, I'll reiterate something that I mentioned in the calculator video. If you present value and future value must have opposite signs, right? And so in my solutions, you're never going to see me write that this was negative, because the only reason why it's negative is because you put your present value in as positive. And so I'm always going to use the absolute value, because that is not a negative number in the true sense of what a negative number represents. It's only negative because the calculator needs these two to have opposite signs. Okay, so make sure, and again, if you haven't seen that calculator video, definitely watch that, because that will really bring you up to speed on how to use the calculator to solve all the problems that were, or at least the basic problems that we're going to apply. And the final thing I want to mention or remind you guys about: whenever something is 0, don't skip over it. Insert it as 0. If you skip over it, sometimes the calculator will remember previous inputs and it will give you undesirable results. So let's scroll down. Let's take a look at number 3. So number 3 is a pretty good problem, and I wanted to go through this one because if you guys remember when I was introducing you to the idea of present value, I said there may be times when you want to structure a problem where present value is not technically today, it's someday other than today. Well, number 3 is a great example of that. So here's that one time out of 20 that I suggested where this might actually come up. So 10 years ago, you invested $48.12 in the stock market. Today, it's worth $97.19. What rate of return did you earn on your investment? The easiest way to set this problem up is to have 10 years ago be my present value and today be my future value, and then solve for the interest rate that brings these two numbers together over that 10-year time horizon. So here, my present value is $48.12. My future value is $97.19. Remember, these must have opposite signs. It does not matter which one is which, as long as they have opposite signs. If you try to put them both in as positive, you will most likely get an error message on your calculator. So make sure that you remember that these must have opposite signs. Again, you will not see me write one of them as negative because either one of them could be negative. So I like to use the absolute value. Payment is 0 and is 10. My interest rate is 7.28%. Number 5. I think number 5 is a good problem to go through because it's an annuity problem. So I just wanted to make sure you guys understand how to solve a basic annuity. So suppose you just bought an annuity that has agreed to pay you $1,800 a year for the next 30 years. How much is that annuity worth to you today if the applicable discount rate is 11%? So here's my timeline, right? From 0 to 30, I get $1,800 every year. My interest rate is 11%. How much are all those payments worth to me right now? Present value is what I'm looking for. Future value is 0, just like I introduced to you guys in the time value money basics videos. My interest rate is 11, my payment is 1800, and my N is 30. So it's a pretty simple calculation. The only other thing that I wanted to remind you guys of is this. We already saw that present value and future value must have opposite signs in the calculator. Well, now, if one of these guys is 0, as we see here, the payment and the guy that's not 0 must have opposite signs. It does not matter which one is which, as long as you give them opposite signs. In fact, we can even make that more general statement of present value, future value, payment. If any one of these guys is 0, the two that are left must have opposite signs every single time in the calculator. Otherwise, it will not work. Otherwise, it will either give you an error message, which in my opinion is kind of bailing you out, or it will give you a number that you think is correct that is not correct. And then finally, number 6 is a problem where we're handling different frequencies. So suppose you plan to invest $500 a month into the stock market for the next 40 years. You expect the return on the market to average 10% over that time. How much money will you have in 40 years? Okay, now, the first thing you want to recognize is this. The payments are made monthly. That means I, payment, and N all must be monthly. So I like to make a note of that to myself so I do not forget. Since everything needs to be monthly, I'm going to go ahead and build my timeline on a monthly time frequency. So it's a 40-year time horizon, but how many months are in 40 years? It's going to be 40 times 12, which is 480, right? There's 12 months in every year. There's 40 years, so it's 480. You're contributing $500 a month every month, 480 months. You're going to earn a 10% return. Now, another important thing to remember, whenever you see an interest rate in a problem, even if it is not specifically stated this way, it is always assumed to be an annual number unless you are explicitly told otherwise. So when you see 10% in a problem, you have to assume that's an annual number and then make your adjustments from there. Do not assume that that is some time frequency other than annual, because 999 times out of 1,000 in the biz world, people talk in annual terms when it comes to interest rates. Okay, so what do I have in my hands? Well, you really just have an annuity on your hands because you're not doing anything today, so your present value is 0. Your interest rate needs to be on a monthly basis. So if it's 10% every year, then you have to figure out, well, what is the monthly rate that corresponds to a 10% annual rate? And that's going to be 10 divided by 12. My payment is $500 and my N is $480. That brings me to $3,162,040. Now, the only other thing I want to mention about this is you'll notice that when you do 10 divided by 12, you get 0.8333333. Now, for my class, as long as you round off to like 3-4 decimals, you'll be fine. And so you probably need, if you have your calculator in front of you for the first time, let's take a second. If you have your calculator in front of you for the first time, reset the number of decimals that is showing on your calculator. This will make your life a little bit easier. To reset the decimals that are on your calculator, you press the second key in the upper left-hand corner. Then you press the decimal button on the bottom. And on the screen, it's going to say DEC equals. That's basically asking you how many decimals do you want your computer set to. I would insert like 5. And then on the top row, press the Enter key. And that will reset the number of decimals on your calculator. As long as you're going to 3-4 decimals, you'll be fine. But I just want to make you guys aware that a lot of times what I'll do in my problems is I'll take 10 divided by 12, which is 0.83333. And with that number on my screen, I'll just press I. So that number goes into I, not rounded at all. If you round that guy off at the 4th or 5th decimal, then you're going to get a number that's going to be different from mine. Could be a couple dollars off, could be a couple $100 off, over a 40-year time horizon. I'm going to see your work on your quizzes and stuff, and so I will not mark that wrong. That is correct. That's just a rounding issue. So it's not something that you have to really worry about. So that's a quick tutorial on how to solve a few of your practice problems.